So my Aerosmith story is probably somewhat similar to a lot of people of my age. It was a music video. It was a music video that started everything. It was a music video by a rap band called Run DMC featuring Aerosmith covering Aerosmith's song Walk This Way. Funny video, two bands kind of competing in a practice space, and eventually like Aerosmith break through the wall and sing the chorus. And I, for one, absolutely loved the way that they sang that chorus. And when I actually heard the real Toys in the Attic version of Walk This Way, I was kind of disappointed. It sounded kind of flat compared to how they sang it in that video. Anyway, that was my introduction. That was an introduction for a lot of us. Why was it an introduction? Because Aerosmith was on life support previous to that video. They had kind of broken up, or Joe Perry and Brad Whitmore had left the band, and they recorded Rock in a Hard Place, which came out in 1982 with different musicians. And I think they had a hit kind of with Lightning Strikes. It's not that bad of a record. And we may have heard of Aerosmith after Rock in a Hard Place in 82 with a follow-up record, which was getting the whole band back together. Only it was an album called Done With Mirrors. Now, it was not a bad record. Everybody, I remember when Permanent Vacation came out, everybody was like, oh, that last record, whatever, it's not even worth getting. It's not a bad rock record. It's pretty good, actually. But they committed the biggest Spinal Tap moments. I don't know. It should be in the new Spinal Tap movie. You put out your comeback record. All five members are back, and you spell every word on it backwards. Not just the cover, not just the title and the name of the band, but all the music titles, all the credits, everything on it. Let's spell it all backwards. And let's not put our logo on there or anything. And you see the song cassette, it's really ridiculous. So, So people my age, around my age, when that Run DMC Aerosmith video came out, it was an introduction, even though this record had come out just a year before. Nobody really knew about it. So my other introduction after I heard the record, or the single of Walk This Way with Run DMC and Aerosmith, was when I went on this ski trip when I was 15 years old to Colorado. And I think I'm going to do a video about that ski trip because it certainly introduced me to a lot of music and I don't know, some other bad habits. But one of the albums that we played over and over on our Sony Walkmans, my friend and I had a little adapter we could listen to the same thing to. And he had brought a bunch of tapes. He turned me on to a bunch of stuff. One of which was Aerosmith's Greatest Hits. Aerosmith's Greatest Hits was a hell of an introduction, and it flowed so well, and the songs were so great. It almost was enough for me at that time where I didn't feel like I needed to track down the individual albums. That would change. But boy, hearing Back in the Saddle and Lost Child and Same Old Song and Dance and the original Walk This Way and Sweet Emotion, all those songs being new to me is really quite something when you hear them all in one batch. Even something like Remember Walking in the Sand or their cover of Come Together by the Beatles was just perfect. So I was kind of ripe for Aerosmith when they decided to really come back with a comeback record. Or maybe they decided to before and it backfired, with the ridiculous cover. But by this point, they had hired all kinds of outside writers, mostly Desmond Child, and they put out this record called Permanent Vacation. And I remember it taking off kind of slowly. I bought it early on because I had already been primed with the Greatest Hits record, and now here's a new record from this band. Okay, cool. I'm going to go get this. And I loved it. I thought it was great. I mean, I remember thinking it was a little slick, and some of the songs I thought were much better than others. I still think fondly of songs like Hangman Jury. Maybe that's it. I don't know. There were good songs in there. It's been forever since Heart's Done Time, I think, was pretty good. Their cover of I'm Down by the Beatles. Even like some of the songs were fine. Ragdoll, Dude Looks Like a Lady, whatever. It definitely served its purpose. It got a whole new generation of fans out there listening to Aerosmith. They came back in such a huge way. I was able to see them twice on that tour. Once in early 88, and the time that I really remember most is the time in the summer when they played outside at Sandstone Amphitheater outside of Kansas City, Missouri. and they played with Guns N' Roses opening up. Yeah. And Guns N' Roses were phenomenal, and they announced to us at the end of the show, their opening set. Axl's like, "Hey, I just found out that our record went to #1." Like, wow. Wow. Little did they know, you know? I mean, things were really, really, that was like sort of the pinnacle of like their early success. So that was super, super cool to see that show. And I thought, you know, how in the world, because I was there for Guns N' Roses primarily, even though, you know, I'd want to see Aerosmith too, but I'd seen them previously in the year. And I thought, how in the world are Aerosmith going to follow this? And they did. I mean, they were as energetic as Axl and company, and were excellent. I remember like in the solos, even like the drum solo, I remember being really cool. And it was just like one of those perfect nights when you're a kid too, and just perfect rock show. And really thought pretty fondly of Aerosmith, and again heard all those songs, those old classic songs that I like so much. And that would lead me, along with something that I read in an REM record of all things. I was a big REM fan. They put out a record called Dead Letter Office. It's a bunch of B-sides and rarities, and they did a cover of the song Toys in the Attic. And Peter Buck wrote, "If you grew up in the 70s, you liked Aerosmith. This one is always fun to play live." Now, something about if you grew up in the 70s, you liked Aerosmith made me sort of long for a past I never had. I would have loved to listen to Aerosmith in the 70s. And I like pictured like blasting Aerosmith in the car on the way to school. And I sort of recreated that. And I bought Toys in the Attic and Rocks on cassette, and I played them, especially Rocks, a lot on the way to school. It was, my little sister mentioned it recently. I mean, listening to that over and over on the way to school. And I loved it. It was just this perfect rock record. And in a way, I think especially Rocks sort of is like the template, follows a template, in some ways set the template for a rock record in the similar way that the Rolling Stones did with Let It Bleed. You know, you've got these rock songs, and then you've got this like ballad. Well, for them, the ballad was Home Tonight, and on Toys in the Attic it was You See Me Crying. But I played those records a lot, and I still love those records. I listen to Toys in the Attic occasionally. I haven't listened to Rocks more than like once in the last 5 years. I've listened to Toys in the Attic probably 4 or 5 times. And I just think they're really good records. And Aerosmith, some people, especially, I don't know, a little bit older or maybe younger, are like, Aerosmith, whatever, and they might write them off pretty easily. But if you listen to these records, especially Toys in the Attic, it's a fine record, and there is certainly nothing wrong with liking Aerosmith. And I really like them a lot, even when they put out, especially when they put out the follow-up to Permanent Vacation, Pump. Pump was an excellent record. To me, it sounded more like what they sounded like on Toys in the Attic and Rocks, and I really liked it. It was a little less slick and a little less commercial sounding than Permanent Vacation, and it just, it kind of rocked. Some of those songs that were on there that weren't singles were some of the best material. I'm thinking of a song called Fine, Fine in particular. Now, I haven't listened to Pump decades, but I remember being a very, very good record. Fortunately, unfortunately for me, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. I stopped listening to Aerosmith. New Aerosmith. Like, Pump was the last record I bought. By the time Get a Grip came along, my musical taste had changed, and it just didn't seem that interesting to me at all. It seemed kind of more poppy. This is also the era when you had Crazy, Crying, Amazing, all these ballads that all sounded the same to me. And I liked hearing the songs once in a while, but I just didn't really listen to them. But I would occasionally listen to their old stuff, including, of course, Toys in the Attic. And there's something about this beat-up copy I got a few years ago I just love. There's initials DG on it. It looks like, it's seen some love, but it plays absolutely great, and I got it for $2. Rocks, picked up this not too long ago as well. The one I just played to death. I like Toys in the Attic better. It's definitely my favorite Aerosmith record. It's a little bit more diverse. Rocks is a little one-dimensional, but it lives up to its title. Then of course for me, getting into Aerosmith, getting their back catalog or whatever, there was also Draw the Line, which was just always remained so elusive. I love this title track. The rest of it I keep trying to warm up to. It never quite works. Maybe a song or two. It's sort of like Led Zeppelin's Presence. You listen to it, then you're like trying to make sense of it. Wait, what was it again? I like Presence a lot better. But anyway, I also liked Night in the Ruts quite a bit. I remember listening to that a lot in high school. I think that's an underrated record, actually. There's some really good songs in there. I really like No Surprise. I just like the way it talks about the band. Remember Walking in the Sand, I think, is on there. Chiquita, I think, is on that one. Or maybe that's on Rockin' a Hard Place. Rockin' the Hard Place, the follow-up to that, when it was just 3/4 of the original band, I thought it was pretty good too. I liked Lightning Strikes. I never got into that as a whole record. I more like songs here and there. But definitely liked Aerosmith. Definitely will stick up for Aerosmith, And so when the news came that Aerosmith is no longer touring, I must admit, I was like, well, yeah, of course. Because when they announced their original farewell tour, I was like, this is never going to work. Because anybody who's been paying attention to Aerosmith in the last 5 years, it's been a complete train wreck of Steven Tyler hurting himself, falling off stage, getting back into drugs, going to rehab. I think Joey Kramer, the drummer, left or got kicked out, and all this controversy around their Vegas residency. It just seems like they've been having a real hard time with things. So it was shocking to me that they made this huge announcement that they're going on this worldwide tour. And for me, I was I don't care to ever see Aerosmith again live. I'll be honest. It holds absolutely no interest to me unless they're playing in I don't know, next door, a really small place, some small club or something. Absolutely. I would be much more interested in them doing maybe a Honkin' on Bobo, but much better, blues record, or I don't know. But at the same time, when do bands just call it a day? At some point, a band like Aerosmith, which was full of youthful energy and a super flamboyant singer who was all over the stage, and I don't know, he starts to look like a little old lady, with his scarves instead of a really cool dude strutting around on stage like a peacock. So bands can just be it, right? They can just go, okay, cool, it's over. And if you read their official announcement about quitting touring, they really do. It really does read like it's the band's over. And hey, good for them if that's the case. But curious about your thoughts. Would you go see Aerosmith had this tour happened? Were you expecting more good music from Aerosmith? And when do bands, is it fine to just go out at some point? I think it clearly is. They haven't put out a new record of new material in, I don't know, a decade plus at least. I didn't check the dates, but I believe that Music from Another Dimension was the last one, and that was quite a while ago. And you could argue they haven't put out a record that really matters. It's killer in decades. So anyway, I'm always really glad that I saw Aerosmith, and I will still continue to play, especially Toys in the Attic and Rocks, and maybe a little bit of Get Your Wings. I have a real soft spot for Seasons of Wither, and assorted songs throughout. I saw a copy of Night in the Ruts the other day for $7 or $8 used. I don't know why I didn't pick it up. I know why, because sometimes I get sick of buying shit I already heard a million times. But now, I wouldn't mind hearing Night in the Ruts, or if you flip it over, I think it was Right in the Nuts. Aerosmith humor. Anyway, that's all I got on Aerosmith, but yeah, what a great band. But it's 2024. Thanks.